Welcome back to the She Thrives Influential Women podcast, the podcast where we turn fear into freedom and we turn self doubt into confidence. I am so glad to have you all here. I am your host, Lori Murphy, empowerment coach for women, award winning published author, as well as a transformational speaker. And together, we will rise above fear. We build unshakable self esteem, and we will just thrive in the lives that we live today. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment, hit that subscribe button, and never ever miss another episode. And if you are ready to take the next steps into your journey, let's book a call today. I will provide my contact information at the end of this podcast, as well as in the description. But for now, let's get started and allow me to introduce you to my guest, Melissa Elias. She is amazing. I am so excited for you all to hear Melissa's story. It is so impactful. Melissa is a woman that is huge on her personal growth journey. She refuses to live life halfway. She also has come to crossroads about 4 years ago when she realized that she was repeating unhealthy patterns and wanted to be different. Melissa started thinking deeply about the legacy that she wanted to leave her two boys and concluded that she wanted to leave the boys the legacy of a mom who faced down demons, made brave choices, and lived life on her terms. Melissa is the proud owner of an amazing company where it flips houses. She does her own designing. And to start this business, she left a long career in education to be able to make her dreams come true. But she never actually left the educational platform because she is still connected and still a part of um, the Board of Education in her local school district. So today, Melissa is going to share with you her story about healing and growth. She's going to be a source of hope and information for people who feel defeated and are too sad or feel unsupported and feel stuck in their lives. She is going to share her story about how she overcame grief over the loss of her son, Alex, and how she was able to turn the pages and make a life that she is proud to have and created that legacy for her children and her stepdaughters, as well as her partner, Brian. Thank you so much, Melissa. How are you today?
I'm really good, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
It's good to
it's
be here.
It's really good to have you. And I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse. I think I might be getting one of those colds that's going around. So
It's
if I get
okay.
a little scratchy, it's all good.
Yes, yes, it is.
So how is your day going so far?
So far, so good. It's early, but I do a lot in a day. My days are busy.
Yeah,
Any different?
what does a
Yeah.
day in your life look like, Melissa?
Well, today, so I'm in between home renovations. So, that just leads to trouble because that means I'm sitting around my own house thinking about the things I could do here. And so this morning I had a contractor over looking at the possibility of I need another bathroom. I don't need another bathroom in my house. I would like another bathroom in my house. So I worked with a contractor this morning to see if it's possible to put it where I want to put it. So that was my morning, and then some errands, some grocery shopping. Yeah, so it's been a good morning already.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good morning. Very productive, which is nice.
Yeah. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Melissa, a little bit about your story, where you're from, and how you made your way from working in education to being a full-time entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I'm from the Utica area. I currently live in Sherrill, New York, which is a beautiful little city just west of Utica. Um, and as you said in your intro, I was a teacher for a long time. I was a teacher for 28 years. I taught high school English, and I enjoyed it very much. Very rewarding career. But I did reach a point in that career where I reached a point in my life, like as you kind of said in the introduction, I reached this point where as much as I liked my profession, it wasn't, it really wasn't my passion. It wasn't 100% fulfilling. Education's tough. It can be a frustrating profession. It wasn't what I loved anymore. And I just wanted to do something different. I had been for a long time, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. My dad's always been in the real estate investment and home flipping business. And I would always help him out on his flips. And I really enjoyed it. But
Mhm.
he would, since they were always his properties, he was really the major decision maker. And at one point I said, I want to do this where I can make all the decisions, the design decisions and the material choices. And so about 5 years ago, that became my goal, and I did get my first property at an online auction, and it has just taken off from there. So knowing how much I really enjoyed the home renovation business, I kind of set myself up, had kind of a 2-year plan to retire from teaching, and that's what I did. I started putting those wheels in motion, like around 2021 or so, shortly after we returned from COVID to teaching, and just made my exit plan and did that last year, June of last year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And by the looks of what I could see in the background, you have a very good talent with bringing, colors and bringing everything together. I'm looking like it might be in your kitchen, and I'm loving that, like
Thank
the
you.
picture behind you. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. This is my kitchen. We redid this a few years ago. I'm on kind of this is navy blue. I don't know if it shows, if it translates, but I'm kind of
oh,
on a navy blue
nice.
kick right now. So like that's been my go-to color for a lot of things.
Oh, but it's awesome. It's
Thank
very
you.
cool. And I think that you have a natural born talent to create and bring those things together because, everybody wants a home that they can be comfortable in and that they can be, that represents who they are. And I believe that you really are talented in bringing all of that together for the people that work with you.
Thank you. Yeah. You've met my mom. My mom is incredibly talented. She's a great artist. My dad's a
Mhm.
great businessman. I don't have the painting artistic abilities that my mom does. She'll take a sheet of paper out and some watercolors, and in a very short time, she's got a gorgeous painting. I don't do that. I express the artistic abilities through my home design, which I really honestly didn't know that I had until I started doing it. And then all of a sudden I was like, I like this and I'm
Yeah.
kind of good at it. And each house that I do get better. I learn all the time. I'm a great student of, like, I'm constantly on the internet looking at trends and colors and trends in design. So I'm really teaching myself as I go.
Yeah. So you didn't take any type of courses. You just are, you're basically self-taught in how you make all of this happen, which is a very special gift to have.
Thank you. Mostly self-taught. Yeah, I am certified in home staging,
Mhm.
which is also a lot of fun. But honestly, that wasn't that difficult.
Mhm.
Um, that's a small piece of the puzzle that really wasn't that difficult to figure out. But yeah, most of it has just been by trial and error. I do a ton of research.
That's awesome. That's
Thank you.
very cool. So you have two grown boys, you said, and you also have two stepdaughters.
I do.
That's
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
you and your significant other, you sound what type of things do you guys like to do together as a family?
Well, we do. So all the kids are grown. They're all out of the house. So right, it's just he and I and our cat. Um, so we're really enjoying that. It's a different phase of our lives. We have a good relationship in that, like, we're both very independent people. We both like our space. I do a lot of, like, he really has no interest in the home renovating, which is fine. He supports me in all that I do. I make big decisions, and he's just like, okay, sure, if that's what you think will work. Like, he's very supportive. Um, so I do my thing, he does his thing, but then we also have, like, we're in a pitch league. We played pitch last night. We do outside activities a lot together. We walk and hike and do outside things together. So we have common interests that we share, but
Mhm.
and we're good, like we have good conversation.
Hmm.
But we also have a lot of independent interests that we pursue, and each of us feels free to pursue those independent interests. So we have a pretty good balance, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how
Yeah.
old are the kids,
So
the
the
grown
kids are,
adults, the adult
yeah,
children?
I know, they'll always be kids, right? So the two girls are 19 and 22, almost 20 and 22. And then my boys are 36 and 38.
That's that's awesome. Like, because they're on their own, but yet they're still your children. They're still your family, and you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I so I know you have this powerful story that there was a lot of, grief and like you said, dark times. Um, when we had talked before that you have really overcome to get to where you are today
Right.
because it wasn't always the way it is now.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what it was like back then during
Oh.
those times.
Sometimes I'm sure, I think everybody experiences this where you look back on a time on your life and you're thinking like, was that even me?
Oh, I do that a lot.
Right, right.
you
And
know?
I think, we live kind of in chapters like that. And so, yeah, that's one of, and thank you actually for providing this platform because you are, I've been silent in my grief for such a long time. And I'm really, I think we've talked about this, like me helping others, I feel, and telling my story to help others is kind of that last piece of my healing journey.
Mhm.
And I have not been able to do that because I literally like could not talk about this for so long. I think the problem with grief is and this is my experience with it, but right after Alex, my son, right after he passed away, you have all these responsibilities to fulfill and all these decisions to make, and
Mhm.
you kind of delay grief even if it's just for a couple days, a couple weeks, because you have to do things, even like terrible things. You have to plan the funeral, and you have to pick out a casket, and you have to go through pictures for it's all of these weird expectations that we have in the immediate throes of a tragedy and grief, right?
Mhm.
And what I experienced is, you know, after having to kind of postpone my grief to make those terrible decisions, when everything got quiet and it's like, okay, now you can grieve. Well, at that point I was like, I don't want to go near that grief again. Like I I kind of, I had already gone through those first steps of burying it and locking it away in this room in my brain. And I thought, I don't want to go near that. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to talk about it. And so for me, I just kept distancing myself from, locked it up, didn't want to dig that up. Like, I mean, really, who would want to? I didn't. I couldn't.
Mhm.
Um, and so, and I also found that the longer I kept the grief pushed aside, the harder it was you just kind of start going on with your life.
Mhm.
um, and meeting I had these two boys
Mhm.
still. Alex was 5 when he passed away, and my two boys were 6 and 8. David was 6 and Lewis was 8. So the other two boys, I needed me to be present as much as I could. So in order to be as present as I could for them, for my marriage at the time, which was terrible. Like I was just trying to hold on to that terrible marriage, which was awful before Alex's death. And that it's certainly, a bad marriage doesn't get better after a child dies, for sure. Because now you have two parents who weren't doing well to begin with, and now you're in terrible grief, right?
Right.
So I was trying really hard to at least salvage that marriage and be there anyway. The grief just gets locked away, and you just try to
Right.
carry on with your life. And the longer you try to carry on with your life, the easier it is to ignore the grief, but it sure doesn't go away. And,
Sure.
at
Yeah.
some point it's going to get you. And it did, it kind of plagued me for a
Yeah.
good, and, no joke, 25 years. I went through my life, like, professionally, I did okay. And on the surface, people were probably, I know people were like, "Oh, she's so strong, and look at what she has made out of her life, and she does so well." And outwardly, I was doing well, but I always felt this little dark
Mhm.
hole in my heart that was not going to heal or go away until I really confronted it.
Yeah. And I know, not just the grieving of the loss of your son. I'm sure there was a lot of grief with the other things that were transpiring in your life, with the marriage that you were in that wasn't, the best marriage, as on top of like the loss of that. And you also, prior to getting married, were on your way to law school.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, as a senior in high school, I was visiting colleges intending to go to law school, and I got pregnant during my senior year. So, yeah, like, we have talked, and I've told you my story has a lot of layers.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I got into this bad marriage, because I thought that was the best option for me, being pregnant. And it just, it was tough. I was in survival mode for a lot of years, a lot of years.
Yeah.
And I had these beautiful babies, and I thought, well, that's where I found my joy. Um, the marriage was bad, but I had these babies that were everything to me.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where I found my comfort, my joy.
Sure.
That's where, I was able to kind of tolerate the marriage because I had these great babies, I
Yeah.
and but when Alex passed away, then I was really at my breaking point. I couldn't exist. I couldn't stay in that survival. I was really in a bad place. Like, it was either me or the marriage at that point.
Yeah. And you chose you,
I had to choose me.
which
Yeah.
was a beautiful thing,
Yeah. Thank you.
and so Alex was 5.
He was.
Tell us a little bit about Alex.
He was just a beautiful little boy. Of course. I mean, every mom's going to say that. But he was fun. He was a fun kid. He was so my two boys, Lewis and David, are kind of different. Lewis is very cerebral, kind of serious. Um, David is a little more laid back, very chilled. Alex was both of them combined. He was kind of that tough, funny kid, but also witty, smart. He was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, and again, I'm sure every mom's going to say that, but of course he was special to me.
Yeah. Must have been, I can't even put into words how painful it had to have been to have lost him so suddenly.
Yeah, yeah, because there's no easy way, I don't think, but he wasn't sick. It was an accident. It was a terrible accident, and it was tragic. It was the whole, me doing CPR and the ambulance and the life support, and it wasn't like. And again, there's no easy way to lose your child, but he wasn't sick where I was like mentally preparing myself to lose him. It happened in a day.
Do you mind sharing what had happened? If not, I mean, that's totally okay. I just,
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. The It's so difficult to describe too. It's almost unimaginable. But in a nutshell, so we were living, the boys' dad and I were living in a home that we had built, and it was almost finished. Still some construction left to be done, and there was some construction up through the center of the house. There was a great room with a big fireplace that ran up through the center of the room, and there was a horizontal beam that would be the future mantle
Mhm.
of the fireplace. To prevent the boys from playing in that area, I had put up like a long credenza to just block off that opening.
Sure.
This is, we don't know why kids do the things that they do. I have no idea. I don't understand it. Um, it was the last day of school for the boys, for Lewis and David. They were older, they were in school. Alex was not. Last day of school for them. They had gone to school, and Alex wanted to do something special with just us before, summer vacation started, and it would be everybody.
Mhm.
So he said he wanted to go to the dollar store and get a toy. So simple, right? That's all 5-year-olds want. I said, okay, that's easy. I can do that. And I went and took a shower. While I was in the shower, I don't understand. This is one thing. I've finally learned to stop asking like how and why, because there are no answers. But anyway, for whatever reason, Alex got a jump rope and he wrapped it around the horizontal beam that was going to be the mantle, and he put his head through it, and he accidentally hung himself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Listen.
It's something that you would never, can't make it up. It was awful.
Oh God. I am
Yeah.
so sorry that you went through that.
Yeah. It's a terrible story. And
Mm.
that's why I couldn't talk about it for so long. It's awful.
Yeah. How did you find yourself navigating through that?
Well, again, I think you go into survival mode. It was a grief so big, and it was so traumatic. You know, I think the brain does a thing where it goes into this other place that I can't explain it, but my brain, whether it's self-preservation, I think it probably is. Um, your brain takes you to a place where it kind of tries to protect you,
Mhm.
and that's where I went, and I stayed in that kind of like self-protect survival mode for a very long time, because I did feel like if I thought about that day too much, and I would relive it, I was like, I'm going to lose my mind. I really am going to lose my mind. um and so I think, my brain was like, hold, we got you, we'll help you. And that, but when you stay in that survival mode, I think that's where it affects your life. Because, I have learned, and this took a lot of time and a lot of work, but I can be, I can grieve for him, and I always will. But there's a lot of joy to be had as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go through my life missing that joy. And I was. So that became my mission, is to reclaim that joy.
Yeah. And you have your two other sons that, you mustered up the strength through this very sudden and very tragic experience to still show up for them. And that I can't, I'm trying to find the words because I'm just like, my heart is just, it feels for you and your
Thank you.
family and what you have experienced. And, you know, it takes a tremendous amount of strength to be able to muster all of that up, to still be able to be a good mom and raise the two boys that you had.
And I did. Like, I did. Like, I think my boys would tell you that they had a good childhood. They know that they were loved. Um, but it came, I don't want to say at a great cost to me, but it came, I still didn't, I never put me first, really. Like, I never healed me. And I think, had I healed me first, it could have been it would have been different. I did absolutely the best I could. I wish I had healed me sooner.
when was the point where you decided, because obviously now you're also in this bad marriage, and you made the decision to choose you. At what
Yeah.
point did you decide that you had to choose you and start moving forward in a different direction?
Well, in terms of that marriage, very shortly after Alex passed away, like I said, I was just barely hanging on. I didn't have the bandwidth for much at all. Um, and I knew that after Alex passed away, that marriage was either we were going to either come together and we were going to, really rebuild as a couple, or we weren't. And we didn't. And we didn't have the tools, really. Both of us were in too much pain at that point. We didn't have the tools to rebuild the marriage. So I left it. I ended it. That in itself is a story. He was away for a business event, and I called my mom, and she came and she got me in with a U-Haul van, and we left. He was abusive, and I couldn't leave. I couldn't tell him that I was going to leave because he would have stopped me. He would have talked me out of it, which he had done so many times before. And I knew I didn't have the strength to fight him.
Mm,
So I left the house when he wasn't there, because that was the only way I knew how to do it. So it was an ugly divorce. It was another painful period. It was tough.
yeah. And all of which, while you're still in this process of grief and survival mode. And
Yeah. Yeah.
how did you do it?
I don't know. I don't know. We find the strength. We really do. I don't know, because shortly, after I ended the marriage, I went back to college and I got my master's degree, and then I started teaching. Um, I don't know how I did it, but I did, so whoever that girl was, she was strong, and she got me, she got me through.
Yeah, she really truly did. And when during all of this did you realize that it was time to face the grief and face the loss and start your healing journey?
Well, and that's the thing that I really want to communicate to people is I lived with that grief for, no joke, 25 years. And like I said, there were parts of my life that were prospering. I was, very successful at my job as a teacher. I was a leader in the school community. Um, I was a coach. I was a mentor. I was an advisor. I was a union president. Like, I was very successful in my job as a teacher, and I loved it. Um, so I functioned just fine. I was a very sad, highly functioning person. But I did notice that every time I was faced with a loss, that feeling of loss, my dad got really sick. Even when my boys left for college, I and I didn't know, it wasn't a conscious thing. It's only in hindsight that I realized this. Sometimes we only realize our patterns and our triggers in hindsight, and that's the work that I did. But it
Mm,
took me 25 years to get to the point where I was like, I have to do this work, because I did realize the pattern.
yeah.
I did realize that every time I felt an impending loss, and it could have been even, you know, grief, there are little losses too. My dog died.
Yeah.
Like, that was a loss for me. And like I said, when it kind of like transitional points in my boys' lives or my parents' lives, anything that triggered grief, I noticed that I would almost create drama or some kind of different situation to distract myself from that impending grief.
Mm,
I would start a fight. I would just anything, I would create a circumstance that would distract me from that feeling of grief. Again, all hindsight. But I got to a point again where I was at this, it was a perfect storm of, like, I was in menopause. It was during COVID. My stepdaughters were moving. Um, I started picking all these fights with Brian, and I started to rethink, like, do I even want this relationship? And then I was like, hold on, like, you're not going to do this again. Like, you're not going to ruin a good thing, because we have a good relationship. I'm very blessed to have him. We've been together for almost 20 years.
Mhm.
So but I was like, very finding myself very dissatisfied with life in general, and kind of like rethinking, like, my whole, like, do I even want this relationship? And that's where I was like, no, you have to stop doing this. There's something behind this that is, like, it's time to stop. It's time to dig in and really find out what's going on. What are you feeling? What's driving it? Like, I
Sure.
had just reached a point, thank God. And Heather actually referred me to a life coach who, again, thank God for her. You life coaches are amazing.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. So, but and it's been hard work. Like, I'm still on this journey. Um, but I'm willing to do it because I can see how good life can be.
Yeah. It's almost a blessing that you were able to recognize that you're essentially self-sabotaging,
Oh, I was so hard. Yep.
and that way you don't have to face, this tragic loss.
Yep.
So that those feelings start to come up. So it's like, okay, I'm going to totally divert this, and I'm just going to, you know what? This looks good. I'm going to fight with you, And
100%.
it's
That
like,
is
so, and it's
100%.
subconscious because that's how trauma, it's a trauma response.
Yes.
It's our minds preventing us from going back to that place of trauma
Yes.
and reliving that pain.
Yeah.
So let's find a different avenue to go down. So some people turn to substance abuse, some
Yeah.
people turn to, other type of behaviors, impulsive shopping, whatever they can do to divert themselves from going down that painful road again.
Yeah.
And other people will self-sabotage. And a
Hmm.
lot of times it's something that does bring them joy.
Yes. Yep.
So when you made the decision to, okay, there's something underlying here, there's a reason for this, did you know that it was going to be connected to Alex's loss?
No. No, I really didn't. I think I knew that I really had not adequately dealt with that. I knew, because I still couldn't say his name. I couldn't say his name. I couldn't have even just had this conversation with you without, I wouldn't have even done it. I didn't want to touch the memory, so, um, I really knew that that was at the core again, we either live in our grief or we live in our healing. And I was living in my grief for a long time, and I wanted to start living in healing. I didn't know how extensively that grief had so affected my life and my decisions. Um, I don't know why I was ever surprised by that, because it was such a deep grief. There's no way it could not have affected everything I did. Um, but it's been a real journey of self-discovery. And
Yeah.
along the way, you also realize, like other things, there were patterns I learned as a child. Even as a child, like in my house, I was kind of the peacekeeper, like, just be the good girl. I was the
Mm-hmm.
good girl. And that was, that kind of that was another layer of my healing that I've had to really work through. Like, I don't need to be that quiet good girl
Mm-hmm.
who just does all the things that I'm expected to do. Like, I can do whatever I want. Um, obviously in kindness and compassion and without hurting other people. But I don't have to be that quiet, silent, people pleasing good girl all
Mm-hmm.
the time. So, there's been a lot of patterns that I've had to dissect. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of work, a lot of brain work. There's always a lot of interior monologue happening in my brain of like, well, how can you handle this? How do you feel about this? What do you need from this situation? What, I have not reached the point yet where it's automatic,
Yeah.
like I'm looking forward to the day when it is just me, when it is who I am. Right now, it's still a conscious effort to remind myself, like, find your voice. What do you want here? What do you need here? What are you feeling here? Why are you feeling sad today? Why are you feeling, I go through all the conversations all day long in my brain.
Yeah. And, what other types of, practices do you do throughout the day or even just like in general to help get you connected to those questions, to the answers to those
Yeah.
questions, right?
Yeah.
The cause, the conditions, the whys, you know what I mean? And oh, by the way, I need to make sure I remind myself that, this
Yeah.
is why I do this. Like, what kind of techniques and skills have you learned along the way?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I notice a huge difference when I do it and when I don't do it. But if I get up and if I start my day, I get up pretty early. I get up about 5:30 and I try to read. I have tons of, like, right now I'm reading How to Heal Your Life or You Can Heal Your Life. I don't know. It's on my How to Heal or You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. It's very good. But I
Mm-hmm.
have tons of these books that so I start my day with some kind of reading or writing. Journaling is huge for me. I find out so many things as I write. Like, I'll be writing, and obviously I love to write. I was an English teacher for a lot of years. So, and it's funny, ironic, because I stress to my students the importance of writing and what you can learn
Yeah.
about yourself through your writing. And I never really made it a good practice for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
now I've tried to make it a regular practice, and I'll journal sometimes and I'll look back on and I'll be, sobbing, obviously, because all of this stuff will have come out and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I was feeling that, or so it's the reading and the writing have been super healing. I listen to podcasts like yours constantly. Like, if I'm working out or walking, I always have my earbuds in with a podcast or music. I have a lot of uplifting music. I meditate. I go to like sound baths with the gongs and the drums, and so I make it, and thank God. So I am retired from teaching, and since I do kind of create my own schedule, I have the time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I devote like at least at least a half an hour, usually more if you include like the walking and the working out time. So at least an hour to an hour and a half a day of me time where I'm reading or writing or reflecting, and that makes all the difference to me.
Yeah. It's amazing how these tools, as you know, I don't want to say redundant, as that they're suggested for a lot of different things. These tools really do bring up so much healing and self-reflection and growth. I couldn't agree more about the writing, because I
Mhm.
used to write poetry when I was in high school, through my parents' divorce, through the situations I was experiencing outside of the household. It was a way for me to really connect with the pain I was in, and just trying to find a healthy release, because I
Mhm.
didn't have any other healthy tools. I smoked a lot of pot and did a
Yeah.
lot of self-destructive things, but that
Yeah.
was the one thing I had that allowed me to really release what it was that I was dealing with at that time. And I still have those poems, and I look back and I'm like, for somebody so young, I felt in some of the most intense things and emotions and feelings,
Yeah.
that really, it's sad that a girl at 16 years old should have experienced that or felt that. um but even as an adult, journaling
Yeah.
has been, you know what I mean. Sometimes I hesitate to, not even sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't look back at some of the stuff that I write in my journal, just because I don't want to revisit it.
I
But
know.
it's like,
I
but
know.
I'm like, man, I want to see, just in the last couple of years, the progression of growth and change that has happened from that point in maybe 2021,
Right.
you know? The one thing I do have to get better at is journaling even on the good days, because I'll turn to journaling when I'm stressed
Mhm.
out or going through stuff, because my mind will be like, write about it, journal about it. You got to release it somehow. But on a good day, it's just like I don't have that discipline to do that yet. So it's
Me
like
too.
people like you are reminding me, like, just journal every day.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
good, the
I do that
bad.
too, though. If I'm in a good place, and if I have things to do, especially when I am working on a house, I want to get to that job site pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Um, and so those are the days when I will put it aside, and those are the days, the first couple days you're fine if you're not doing that inner work. The first couple days you're like, okay. But for me, after a few days of not doing it, I start to feel a little wonky, and that's when I have to ask myself, like, okay, what are you not doing for yourself? What do you need? What's
Hmm.
happening? Like, that's when I have to, like, kind of course correct and and get myself what I need to put myself in the right place.
Absolutely. I find that if I'm not doing practices like what you're mentioning, or even meditation,
Hmm.
which is something that another thing that I love to do, yoga, and I've kind of gotten away from it because, like you, it's like things go good, you want to get to that job site for your business.
Hmm.
I can't wait to get on a call with a client. I can't
Right.
wait to do a podcast interview. I I fill myself up with so much of that when I start to feel myself depleting a little bit, and being in a, burnout state of mind, I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. Like I need to that's when I know that I need to be taking better care of myself,
Yeah.
because I'm at a lower point. Operating at a lower frequency.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
trying to stay consistent in those practices that, can be a challenge sometimes for us as, busy women. But
Well, yeah, especially, like, and I don't have little children, and Brian gets up and goes to work very early. Like, I have a lot of freedom and a lot of time. So it I don't know, like, I would have to be ultra disciplined, me times 10, to get it
mhm,
done if I had children, or a 7 to 4, 9 to 5, whatever job. I'd have to be ultra disciplined.
yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. I don't have children either, but there is a full schedule all the time,
Mhm.
full-time job and all the things. So like you, it's like I kind of have to feel like I have to be ultra disciplined. And sometimes I can be, but
Yeah. Well, once I
um
start, like, I typically will put, I think probably everybody does this. I'll put it off and I'll put it off, and then I'll sit down and start writing, or I'll sit down and start reading, and I'll be like, why did you wait so long to do this?
mhm,
Um, so yeah, because it does, it does create a really great noticeable shift in how I feel, and just how I can handle my day. Like, I just feel like I manage my day in a much more peaceful way when I've started it off that way.
mhm,
Whereas if I hit the ground running, and sometimes it's fine, sometimes I can hit the ground running and start meeting all the demands of life, and I can come to the end of the day and be like, oh, that was a good day. I got a lot done. That was fantastic. Um, Sometimes I can do that. But if a crisis comes along, I might deal with it better if I started off the day in a better place.
yeah. Absolutely. And now with of all the work that you've been doing, with working with a life coach, having all of these tools, and now you're in a different place than you were a few years ago. When you are faced with situations where it might be grief,
Mhm.
um, or loss, do you find that you are handling those situations differently? And
Yeah, you
how
know
and
what I
how
do?
are how do you think
Yes.
you're handling it now?
I cry. Like, when I'm feeling grief now, or when I feel sad, I cry. I cry a lot now, actually. um, but it's necessary. But I feel the things, like, I cry or I get angry. Um, I feel the feelings. Like, again, and that goes back to kind of like that good girl, like, oh, you can't be angry, don't be sad. Like, I've given myself permission to cry and to feel bad and to, like healing my where I exist right now in my journey with healing is it's not all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and flowers, and I
Mm-hmm.
cry and things are ugly sometimes and I don't always get it right, but damn, I'm trying.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think that's how I handle my grief better now, and that I
Mm-hmm.
recognize it, and I have learned to ask myself, like, why are you feeling this? What is behind this decision that you want to make? Is this coming from a place of grief or is this coming from a place of clarity? Like, what is behind this decision that you want to make? So I think I've just gotten more aware of the where I'm at, like the
Mm-hmm.
questioning process, but I think number one is I cry a lot. I let men, when I first started, I think, for the first year or so, Brian would just I don't know if he knew what to do with me, because I would just cry. And, but I needed to. It was years of not crying that,
It
that
just
were,
kind of you opened the door and it
yeah.
unleashed. And now would you say that being on this journey, things have improved in your relationships?
Yes, 100%. And a big thing that improved with my relationship, this is key. My biggest takeaway is that, I think a lot of us live in this world where we're like, well, and I did. Well, if Brian would only stop doing this, or if Brian would do this, then the relationship will be good. Then I'll be happy. And man, I had to stop that, because it's all about me and how what I'm doing. I cannot, there's this goes to Byron Katie, with staying in your own business. My
Mm-hmm.
business is my business. What he does is not my business. How I react to it is my business. But
Mm-hmm.
he's free to do whatever he wants. Everyone is free to do whatever they want. The difference is how I react to it. And that's been a
Exactly.
game changer for me, a huge game changer. I'm not responsible for anybody else's behavior but my own. The only thing I'm responsible for is how I react to that. And that's been a huge game. I don't need him to be any different for our relationship to be great. And me
Yeah.
learning that, and believe me, I still have that conversation with myself every day. But me learning that has been a game changer.
I think that that is very powerful and solid, you know, um, even as advice. It's just, I find that when I am doing that same thing, where it's like, I can't control other people's behaviors, but I can control how I react and how I respond, right? And when I can be in that place of, realizing that and actively utilizing those tools, it really does change the game and how you approach situations, any situation in life, and
Yeah.
how much that can improve, the the relationships that you have, whether it's a romantic relationship, a professional relationship, relationship with family. It's definitely a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you learn that, what people do and say very often is, and I get this because I did it. Like we do and we say things that are a reflection of our own turmoil and our own grief and our own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and people walk around like that all the time. They're doing and saying things that are a reflection of themselves and what's going on with them, and really not me. So like not reacting has really it keeps me, it helps keep me in a place of peace. Like I don't have to react to everybody and everything because it probably has nothing to do with me and it doesn't affect me really anyway. So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
if there was one thing, if there's a woman who's listening to this podcast right now who is in that place of grief, in that place of avoiding the grief, whether it was a loss of a child or a parent or significant other, somebody who was in the place that you were years ago, what would you tell them? What could you tell them to help get them through?
Well, I would say as hard as it is, It's easier to live in the grief. Here's the thing too, is it's easier to live in the grief, even though that sounds contradictory. It's easier to live in that survival mode
Mhm.
than it is to face that grief and to feel that grief. It's easier, but it's not better because the quality of my life is so good now. And it's just getting better and better. So my advice would be not to live with that grief, as painful as it will be, to exercise it, do
Mhm.
it. Because me living in that grief for 25 years, it really impacted me. I'm not one to look back on my life and be like, oh, it could have been this or it could have been that. I don't know. Like, I am super grateful for the life and I believe that we are on exactly the road that we are supposed to be on.
Mhm.
So if it was my journey to, live with that grief for 25 years, I don't think it was. I think that I needed to talk about it and work through it sooner.
Mhm.
And I don't say that with regret. I'm not like, I've learned to eliminate the word should from my vocabulary because it is what it is. But my advice would be not to try to just cope with that grief because life
Mhm.
is better without it. Even though that transitional period is pure living hell,
Yeah.
like, the tears that I cried and the pain that I felt and the conversations that I had to have were terrible.
Mhm.
But I have such great, I don't know, I live in a real state of joy and excitement now, which I never thought would have been possible. I always thought I was just going to be kind of like, all right, my life will be okay. I'm going to muddle through it and then I'm going to die, and that's no way to live.
Right. Right. Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, I would say like talk, even if it's just one, even if it's one, even, I don't even know if you need anybody else. Like, do the writing, go sit in your car and scream, go sit in your car and cry, write, read, break things, punch pillows, whatever you need to do to get that out. Start now. Like, don't live with it.
Yeah. That's powerful advice.
Thank you.
And if somebody wanted to reach out to you and talk with you, knowing that you've been through it and you can be a guide in their journey, how can they find you?
Yeah, I love that actually. Um, my email address, Melissa Elias 14, the number 14 at gmail.com, through Facebook. But yeah, I actually would welcome that because again, I think that the final piece of this healing journey for me is I want to help other people so that they don't suffer in silence for 25 years and miss out on all the joy that life has to offer.
Yeah. And I think that if anybody is listening to this podcast who is in that place, you definitely should reach out to Melissa because, there's no better way to help along your healing journey than to help others, to take your experience and be able to turn it into a positive to give back to those who need it also. You can rely on each other for support. That is huge in healing, huge in healing. You help each other.
Yep, I'm glad you said that too, because I have a group of women and most of the women that I get my support from actually don't know my story, which is because again, I'm just starting to talk about this. Um, but even not knowing the griefs that we have or the griefs that we've endured, good friends are good friends, like no matter what. Like just being in the presence of a good friend or
Hmm.
friends is that's the medicine that we need.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would, and I say women because we are women. I'm sure there are some men out there too, but women just kind of get women. I think
Yeah.
I don't want to be sexist, but I think women, like, we're queens, and we need each other and we can lift
Yes.
each other up in a way that I don't know. I don't know if men can always do it. I know my women friends are my lifelines.
Yes. I think that they're like like you said, I mean, I know that there's men out there who are experienced too, and not to discredit their
Right.
emotions or anything like that, but there is something about men helping men and women helping women
Yeah.
that, because men, they process their emotions differently than women do. Women understand each other better than, like I don't understand how men process emotions all the time. I don't. And
No.
that's partially the reason I work with women solely, is because I know I can relate to women better because I know what they're going through. I've experienced it, but I can't say that I can do the same for a man because I don't always understand what they've gone through or how they're experiencing it. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Melissa, I am so glad that you came on today and shared your story. Thank you so much for, allowing us to, allowing me to be able to provide you this space and to be so transparent with your story and openly sharing it, especially being that this is a first time that you're really putting it out there. And I am honored to have had you come on to my podcast and be that platform for you today.
Thank you. Yeah, I do appreciate you. And we've said, like, I don't think there are any coincidences really. I think we met for a reason.
Yeah, we met at a Utica Coffee breast cancer function. My husband and I were going to get a photo, and you held our coffee, and we ended up sitting down for about a good hour with you and your mom. And
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
opened that door. And like you said, there's no coincidences. We were supposed to meet.
Yeah. Yeah. People cross our paths for a reason. And you crossed my path for a reason. And I am super grateful. Thank you.
I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. Well, thank you so much. And I will post the links in the description on how you can reach Melissa. You can reach me if, like I said earlier, if I can be of service, you're ready to get started on your journey. Um, please reach out to me. My email is M as in Michael C empowerment@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook under Lori A. Murphy, Empowerment Coach for Women. But I will also post all the links down below. Thank you so much for listening and being with us today. And I will leave you with this. Let go of fear and let your spirit shine.